Today's podcast is brought to you by Visa. With the capacity to process over 65,000 transaction messages every second, Visa has been bringing innovations to the way we pay for over 60 years. Imagine a world where, instead of just tapping to pay with Visa, you had to wait for everyone in front of you to cut a check. Everywhere you went. Imagine how much fun it'd be trying to track down your cousin in Milwaukee for league dues. That's why Visa's vision is to be the best way to pay and be paid everywhere, so you won't have to. Whatever your goals are, Visa makes paying fast and easy. The only thing left to figure out is, where would you like to be? Visa, everywhere you want to be. Hey everybody, welcome to First Things First. I'm Nick Wright, filling in for Jenna Wolfe once again. Our friend Jenna had a cheeseburger for the first time in 11 years, got mad cow disease. We expect her back on Monday. That is Chris Canty. This is Brian Westbrook. Thank you guys for yesterday and thank you guys for today. Ready to go?
Yeah, ready to go.
All right, let's get into it. Big news last night while a lot of you were probably sleeping. The Cowboys will reportedly be finally moving on from Jason Garrett after he's been head coach there for 9+ seasons. The move comes 5 days after Dallas was unable to get into the playoffs and after Garrett met with Steven and Jerry Jones multiple times. Chris Canty, I will start with you. Why did they drag this out so long?
Well, here's the thing. I believe that Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones are trying to pitch Jason Garrett to stay with the organization in some capacity. He's not going to be the head coach in 2020, but maybe an advisory role or a consulting role, because you don't need 3 meetings to determine whether or not he deserves the opportunity to be the head coach. I think that's already been decided. It's just a matter of whether or not he's going to stay within the organization. You know that Jason Garrett played as a quarterback with the Dallas Cowboys, and then he spent over a decade as a coach in some capacity with the organization. So you recognize that Stephen Jones and Jerry Jones have an affinity toward him. He's proven that he can work with those guys, be collaborative in terms of coming up with ideas and being able to implement them with the football team. But the results on the field just haven't worked out. And from that standpoint is why you can't justify bringing him back as your head coach next season.
Yeah, you certainly can't give him another opportunity to go 8-8. And the message to the football team is obviously been stale. You have so much talent on the football team, and they just can't find a way to win. That's why they're 8-8, and that's why coaches get fired. But I think when you spend over 20 years with an organization like Jason Garrett did with the Dallas Cowboys, you have to accumulate some respect. And I think that Jerry Jones gave him that respect to say, okay, have those exit meetings with your players, have the exit meetings with your staff and the people in the building, and then go out there. And if there's a possibility that we can find a space for you in the organization, whether it's a senior advisor or whatever, we'll give you that opportunity while you source out the other opportunity that you have across the league. And I think these last few days, that's exactly what's been going on. Jason Garrett has been calling around trying to figure out, can I be a head coach here? Do I have an opportunity in New York? Do I have other opportunities to be a coordinator somewhere else? And finally, yesterday, they were like, okay, enough is enough. Or early this morning, enough is enough. We're going to now move forward and get rid of you, Jason Garrett. And now he'll go out there and find a job. He'll get some other opportunities, though.
With that said, it's still, while Ed Werder's reporting, I'm sure, is totally buttoned up, it should be noted the Cowboys are still yet to make the official announcement. Right. There's no official word from Jason Garrett. I only say that because this story will linger until the Cowboys officially have either a Jerry Jones press conference or a press release that says Jason Garrett will not be retained past this season to be the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. So why would it take so long is what I asked you. My hypothesis is maybe a little more, I don't want to say nefarious, but a little less X's and O's football, a little less logical, I think, for some, but very logical for Jerry Jones, which is Jerry Jones is a master marketer and better at manipulating media than he is at anything with football, and he's good with some football things. And yesterday I used the example of Lakers, Yankees, Cowboys, the 3 benchmark franchises in sports, and the Lakers and Yankees have obviously done a lot more winning, certainly over the last quarter century, if not the totality of their franchises, than the Cowboys. But it got me thinking about when George Steinbrenner first bought the Yankees in his first 23 years. How many managers did he have? 20, not 20 different people, but 20 managerial changes, including during the time the Yankees were the least relevant of any time in their history, that period right after the late 70s, early 80s, that drought in the mid 80s, late 80s to early 90s. Billy Martin is fired and brought back. The Yankees find a way to stay in the news. And I feel like some of this is Jerry Jones taking a page out of that book. The elongated Ezekiel Elliott holdout, where it'd be one thing if Zeke holds out and then it's like, wow, Zeke folded. He got under Todd Gurley money. He got more than Melvin Gordon was looking for, but he got exactly what he wanted. The most money any running back's ever gotten. So why did that take so long? Because Jerry had it be a long, drawn-out process. We now have had, since the Cowboys have been eliminated, a week of stories about what's going on with Jason Garrett. We will now have a week of stories about who are they interviewing, and then a few days of who they finally hired. It's been a way for the Cowboys, in my estimation, to stay in the news, which is the one thing, more so than execution on the football field, they have been best at over the Jason Garrett era. But I'll spin it forward to this. What do you think, Brian, is the most important quality or characteristics of the next head coach of the Dallas Cowboys?
Well, when you look at the team, they have talent at the quarterback position, and Dak had a record type of year this season. Obviously, what Zeke's going to bring you. Amari Cooper, Randall Cobb, all Michael Gallup. They're all receivers that can get things done on the outside. So offensively, you have the ability to go make plays. You have guys that can get it done. You have to have someone that can galvanize that offense. You have to bring the offense together, but also be able to get downfield. You need more explosive plays. You don't need to be thinking about, we're going to hand the ball off to Zeke, and then maybe on third down we'll try to run a play action. At some point, you got to throw the ball down the field. This offense needs motion, needs more creativity. You need some special plays. But you have the guys to do it. And so offensively, when you talk about a head coach, you have to find a guy that can bring a different style of offense to this organization. And I wouldn't be surprised. And again, we were talking about what took so long to get Jason Garrett out of there. I wouldn't be surprised if Kellen Moore, if guys that were in the building already, those types of contract negotiations were done with Jason Garrett as well. Do you think that Kellen Moore should stay? Do you think other people that are inside the building currently should stay?
That they were picking his brain in those meetings?
Absolutely. You're picking his brain about all those things. Jason Garrett's been there for a long time. He knows Jerry Jones just about as well as anybody in the NFL. And so if you can't ask Jason Garrett what we should do next with this organization, who can you really ask? And so I think that's been part of it. But when you talk about head coaching, you got to find a guy that can get the best out of this offense and his players. They have to open things up just a bit.
Well, it's interesting that you bring up Kellen Moore because the report came out yesterday that Jason Garrett was lobbying for play calling responsibilities if he wasn't going to get the contract extension this past offseason, and Jerry Jones declined his request and elevated Kellen Moore to the offensive coordinator. It should be noted that this was the first year in the Dak Prescott, Ezekiel Elliott era of Cowboy football where they did not win time of possession. So they didn't play complimentary football because they had a rookie play caller in Kellen Moore. And so the fate of their head coach hinged on a guy that has never done the job before. And as you know, Nick, with any new job, any new role, there's a learning curve. And in a season with these types of expectations, it's unfortunate for Jason Garrett that this is one of the consequences from Jerry Jones deciding to go with Kellen Moore as the OC. But in terms of the characteristics that you're looking for in your next head coach, you want somebody that knows what the hell they're doing in terms of program building. If you look at the Dallas Cowboys under Jerry Jones, when they've had success, they had Jimmy Johnson and they had Bill Parcells, guys that know how to build program, know how to establish structure within an organization in order to have sustained winning. They need somebody that has the credentials, the resume to be able to push back against Jerry Jones and for him to understand these are football decisions, allow football people to take care of it. I think you need that type of personality, especially when you're talking about playing under a microscope in Dallas.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like you're saying someone who's been an NFL head coach before.
Yes.
So not Matt Rule, not Lincoln Riley, at least in your estimation, someone who has been a head coach before and understands the requisite things that go into building a sustained, long-term, successful organization. I agree with you that it should be someone with NFL head coaching experience, unless it's Urban Meyer. I think Urban Meyer has done enough at enough different stops, had coached enough guys that became pros, and has more of a cachet than Matt Rule could build at Baylor in 20 years, more of a cachet than Lincoln Riley even has, given the amazing things he's done with the quarterbacks at Oklahoma. I think that is the one person that does not have head coaching experience that I think could have the power of personality in a locker room where grown men sit up straight and say, okay, this is our leader. But other than that, Josh McDaniels' his name a lot of people are going to bring up. I think it's a really smart one, but whether it's Urban, Josh McDaniels, or mystery candidate X, the one thing Jimmy Johnson and Bill Parcells have in common is ever since Jerry Jones fired Tom Landry right after he got to the Cowboys, Jimmy Johnson and Bill Parcells are the only two coaches he has paid top dollar for. He has never believed you have to pay your head coach a ton of money, except for in those two instances. Jimmy Johnson brought him 2 Super Bowls, built the team that won a third, and Bill Parcells helped build a team that got him back into the playoffs, and the year after he left, they went 13-3, as you mentioned yesterday. Since then, they've gone in-house, cheaper, tried to find another way, and it has not worked out. I wonder if Jerry, as he enters the twilight, if he's more willing to say, you know what, this is ultimately going to be Steven's money anyway. Might as well spend it on trying to get another Super Bowl. On to Tom Brady, who for the first time in his career is going to be a free agent at the end of this season, and the Patriots cannot franchise tag him. So, if Saturday's game against the Titans ends in a loss, TB12 could be on the move. Brady was asked yesterday about the possibility of playing his final home game in New England.
I'm not much for nostalgia, you know. I'm just pretty focused on what I need to do, and it's this week's felt pretty much like every other week for the last 20 years. I haven't thought about those things, and I wouldn't be thinking about those things anyway. It's felt like a normal week for me, so I just approach practice like I always have, and try to do the best I could do. So that's what I'm gonna do this weekend as well.
Do you hear people wondering about it or no?
About what's my last game? I haven't turned the TV on. It's probably not the best after we lose to turn the TV on, listen to all your guys' shows and stuff like that.
He doesn't turn TV on. He only does Facebook Watch, where he has his own television show. Brian, if the Pats lose, do you think this will be Tom Brady's last game as a Patriot?
No. I think when you have the greatest of all time, the GOAT, Tom Brady, you allow him to come back as often as he wants. If he wants to play till he's 45, then he'll play till he's 45 in my uniform, especially if I'm Robert Kraft. This guy has brought relevancy to the Patriot organization. He brought this organization from nowhere in a bunch of championships. And when he wants to retire, that's when he retires from us. He gets a pass from any types of bad season like this one was. And I want to remind you, this season was bad, but then again, last year, Tom Brady only had 300 more yards passing, a few more touchdowns, a handful of more touchdowns, and so it wasn't terrible. Here's what I would do if I'm Tom Brady in the Patriots. I'm going to retool. I'm going to make sure my offensive line is healthy to begin the year. I'm going to get a running attack going. I'm going to find some receivers, and if it's N'Keal Harry, I'm going to allow him to develop. If Edelman's continue to be injured, I'm going to find a younger Julian Edelman. I'm going to find more pieces, more weapons to put around Tom Brady to allow him to be successful. I'm not throwing away Tom Brady and his 19 years of experience up there in New England just because he had one bad season that was off. I remember from 2010 to 2013, they didn't make a Super Bowl. Then every other year, they won the doggone Super Bowl. So they can have a bad year and bounce back. You have a good defense, add the ability to score some points offensively. That will support your defense, and you're right back to it next season.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think the short answer is no. Tom Brady's not going to play anywhere else. Where I will somewhat disagree with you is that Tom Brady, just based on his resume, will have the right to be back as the quarterback. You're talking about a Bill Belichick coach team, and Belichick is notorious for moving on from a player a year early as opposed to a year late. The only difference with the Tom Brady situation is there is no in-house replacement for your quarterback if you decide to part company with TB12. Belichick is not turning it over to Jarrett Stidham. That's not going to happen. We saw that it's just a little too much for Jarrett Stidham, and he came in garbage time for the Jets. He played in the preseason. You see that he's not ready. So they don't have a viable replacement for Tom Brady. So from that sense, I do believe he'll be back. The organization will want him back. Now it's just a matter of whether or not Tom Brady wants to come back. But when you're talking about a quarterback who over the course of 2 decades has never had a losing season, never had a season under 500, never had a season at 500.
Yep.
Yeah, most of the seasons that he's played in have been double-digit win seasons. There's only 1 year out there where he was 9-7. That was the year after they won the first Super Bowl.
And it's the only year they've ever missed the playoffs.
It's the only year they ever missed the playoffs with him. So Tom Brady recognizes how important it is to have good people around him, to have the infrastructure in place in order to compete at the highest levels. And when you're talking about an infrastructure with an organization in the NFL, you have to look at the head coach. He's not going to go somewhere else and find a better head coach than the one that he has right now. So for that reason, I think it makes all the sense in the world for Tom Brady to come back.
I think you guys are both respectfully ignoring the enormous amount of evidence we have that this marriage is on the rocks. And much like an actual marriage, it only takes one party to break it off. And I think your point, Canty, that you alluded to, which is Brady, even if the Pats do want him back, they cannot franchise tag him. Brady has, for the first time in his career, full rights of, I can go wherever I want. But I want to talk about the Pats side of things first, because that's where the evidence lies. The New England Patriots this offseason, despite Tom Brady being the GOAT, despite him having just delivered them their 6th world championship, he went to the team and said, I want a contract extension. I am age 42. I want to play until I am 45. I would like a 3-year extension. They said, you can't have it. Okay, a 2-year extension. No. Okay, a 1-year extension. Keeping in mind, what I've done over the last 3 years is the greatest comeback in Super Bowl history at age 39, a league MVP at age 40, and another Super Bowl, including a comeback on the road in the 4th quarter of the AFC Championship game against league MVP at age 41. That's what I've done over the last 3 years. Can I have a 1-year contract extension? And Bill Belichick looked him in his face and said, no, you cannot. Not that dissimilar, except with a far better track record, to Jason Garrett not getting a contract extension this offseason. What did we say when he didn't get it? It's a prove-it year for him. If they don't go further, if they don't advance at least to X, the NFC Championship game or the Super Bowl, he is going to be out. If Bill Belichick would not give Tom Brady a contract extension after those 3 years, after that level of excellence, 2 championships, a Super Bowl MVP, and a regular season MVP, if they go 12-4, lose at home to the Dolphins, then lose at home to the Titans, and they're out in the wild card round, that all of a sudden he is now going to get him the contract extension he couldn't get this offseason. They knew when they turned him down this offseason who Jared Stidham was, what the quarterback pipeline looked like, and who the viable quarterback free agents were. But the other side of it is, what if you guys are right, the Patriots do want him back, and Tom Brady looks around and says, man, I told them to keep Antonio Brown. I told them I needed more help. I'm watching Drew Brees break the records of Peyton Manning that I was supposed to be the one to be breaking. He's got Michael Thomas. There's a team in LA, one of the cities I own actually a $20 million home in, a city my wife loves, a city I probably plan to retire to, that has Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, not 1 but 2 quality running backs, not 0 but 1 very good tight end, unlike us. And they've got an opening at quarterback, and they need to put butts in seats. You don't think that looks attractive to him? Like, even if the Patriots say, Tom, our bad, or if Kraft steps in and says, forget Bill. Bill has a boss, it's me. Tommy, you want a contract extension. You don't think he's at least listening to what the Los Angeles Chargers would say? Because you're right about the coaching discrepancy, and nothing against Anthony Lynn, he's not Bill Belichick. But the Chargers have as much talent on the offense as any team in football. They have no one under contract for quarterback next season. Do you think it's in play that Tom Brady is the one that breaks up this marriage, if you will?
Well, if you're Tom Brady, you certainly have to consider it. You have to look at the talent on both teams. And when you look at Keenan Allen and Williams and their slew of running backs that they have out there, you're saying they got a bunch of talent out there. This is the one thing I'm thinking about if I'm Tom Brady. I've played in the AFC East for a very long time. And throughout throughout those years, the Bills are just now getting good. The Dolphins have been bad, and the Jets have been bad. That's easy. 6 games right there. You pad your stats. You look much better than you probably are. Compare that to the AFC West. The Broncos, they get after the quarterback. They attack the quarterback. The Raiders will continue to get better. And then the Kansas City Chiefs, you'll be facing Patrick Mahomes twice a year. Do you actually want to do that if you're Tom Brady at the age of 43 next year? I don't think that's something that he wants to face with a brand new system, brand new team. You don't know what happens with Tom Brady without Josh McDaniels and Bill Belichick. So if I'm him and I'm in year 20 next year, I'm saying, do I want to do something totally new, something totally foreign to me, or can I go back to a retooled offense in New England and find a way to win with a very good defense? That's the way that I would point.
Well, yeah, and here's the way I look at it. You have to look at the organization that you would be going to. Now, you mentioned the LA Chargers, and it reminded me of something that Colin Cowherd always talks about. He says organizations, not players, win championships. When's the last time the Chargers won anything?
Organization.
They're a terrible organization.
Yes,
so why, if you're Tom Brady, would you entrust the twilight of your career to them when they've proven that winning at the highest level is not their top priority? To me, I don't think that seems like a situation that you want to put yourself in. And you talk about the skill position players that the Chargers have. Keep in mind, Melvin Gordon's probably out of there after this season. He'll be a free agent. He's probably not signing up to play for a team that wouldn't give him a contract extension coming into a contract year. But in looking at that situation, I don't think that makes a whole lot of sense. And when you look at the landscape of the National Football League, at the organizations that prioritize winning at the highest levels year in, year out, it doesn't feel like there's a coaching vacancy. Not a coaching vacancy, a quarterback vacancy available. So I just think that even though Tom Brady and Bill Belichick wanted to afford themselves maximum flexibility in terms of options in the 2020 offseason, I just don't feel like either one is going to part company from the other.
And when the Patriots organization opted against giving Tom Brady his contract extension this offseason, what did he do the very next day? Very publicly put his house in Brookline, Massachusetts up on the market. As far as other organizations, you referenced Colin Cowherd. With respect to my dear friend Colin Cowherd, he talked about this yesterday, and he said the Indianapolis Colts are a viable option. Colin, I say this with all due respect. Ain't no way in hell Tom is dragging Giselle to Indianapolis. That one ain't happening, my friend. On to the Seahawks and Eagles. Russell Wilson going to be in Philly to face Carson Wentz. This will be Wentz's first career playoff start. It's going to be a tough one with all the injuries his team has on offense. Chris Canny, who wins this game on Sunday?
I'm rolling with the upset. I'm going with the Philadelphia Eagles, and I know that they're a home dog. I think it's time to break out those underdog masks. But the Philadelphia Eagles, one of the things that I like about this team is that they're strong on both lines. Now, they took a blow because Brandon Brooks is not going to play in this game. On Sunday, they lost him last week in their regular season finale against the New York Giants. But they still have that defensive line intact with Fletcher Cox, Derek Barnett, and company. And I think that they can put some pressure on Russell Wilson if that Seahawks offense isn't able to establish that run game. I know that they signed Marshawn Lynch last week, but that was out of desperation because they lost C.J. Prosise, they lost Rashad Penny, and they lost Chris Carson. So you're talking about their 3 best options at the running back position within the last 5 weeks of the season. So this is a desperate Seahawks team in terms of being able to try to find production in the run game. If they get forced to be in a drop-back game and try to put it on Russell Wilson's arm, I just don't think they're going to have a lot of success doing it that way. Since week 10, the Seahawks are giving up sacks on 10% of their dropbacks. That by far is the highest rate in the National Football League. No other team is doing that. So you have to be a little bit concerned if the Seahawks are forced to be a volume passing team in this game, that this is probably going to be a one-sided affair.
Yeah, the Seahawks certainly have to protect their quarterback better. But it's just funny how we all have said at parts during this season that Russell Wilson is an MVP. He's the best quarterback that we've seen all year. And now we're saying because they don't have the running backs, we have to worry about putting everything on the shoulders of Russell Wilson. I think Russell Wilson is just that good. I think Metcalf can be an explosive player down the field. I think Lockett can do the same thing. The one big thing that the Philadelphia Eagles defense has struggled at is covering receivers deep down the field. And Russell Wilson throws one of the best deep balls in the NFL. And so because of that, I think that they could take advantage of the Eagles defense on Sunday. But here's the other part. Philadelphia Eagles are missing Alshon Jeffrey, Deshaun Jackson. We don't know what's going to happen with Zach Ertz and his ribs. Obviously, Brandon Brooks. So their frontline guys, as far as their ability to run the football, it's been compromised. Their ability to make plays down the field has been compromised. The only way that they've been able to be successful is Carson Wentz taking a bunch of guys that were on the practice squad or just weren't playing at all and making those guys special. And really, and Coach Mangini talks about it all the time, being an elevator, being a force multiplier. Carson Wentz has been that force multiplier. You have to wonder, does that happen in the playoffs? I think with tougher teams that you're going to be facing, it's going to be harder for their offense to score points.
So here's the other element to it. Philadelphia was 5-7, and then what happened? They won 4 straight. But how did they win those 4 straight? They had 4 straight games against a historically bad division, the NFC East. They went Giants, Washington, Dallas, back to the Giants on that 4-game winning streak. I refuse to be duped by the last month of the season where they were playing only divisional opponents. They had a losing record outside of the division. All year long, we talked about how this very talented team had been underachieving and then ravaged by injuries. Seattle, on the other hand, I actually think last year in the playoffs, had they suffered a spate of running back injuries like they have this year, they'd have beaten the Cowboys. Because last year in the playoffs, what cost them that game was their dedication to running the ball. They ran the ball 24 times for 73 yards in that playoff game, which is bad. It's even worse when you consider 13 of those yards were by Russell Wilson and 28 of them were the one time Rashad Penny got loose. That means on their other 19 carries, they got 42 total yards. Meanwhile, when Russell dropped back, which he should have done way more often, but that Brian Schottenheimer offense, they wouldn't let him, and it was incredibly frustrating to watch. They were very successful. I think they are forced into letting Russell Wilson drop back more, and I actually think that's good for them. I think sometimes they believe they are a run-first, defense-oriented team. The defense in Seattle is not that good.
No.
Since 2009, 132 teams have made the playoffs. The Seattle Seahawks have the 129th sack rate of those 132 teams. That's from Bill Barnwell's great preview article that went up last night. I think this is a Russell Wilson game, and I think Russell Wilson is one of the 3 best quarterbacks in football. I think he can have another signature moment. With that said, Canty, I think it's a very close game. Seattle does not know how to blow people out. They don't even try, seemingly, to blow people out. They have 11 wins this year. 10 of them have come by 8 points or fewer. They've been in one-score games all year long. So I like Seattle. I like Seattle in a very close one. And because it'll be a close game, Carson Wentz will, I think, have an opportunity for the signature moment that he has yet to have in his career because he hasn't played in the playoffs. I just don't know if Philly has the horses for it, despite them being on a 4-game winning streak.
No, listen, I get you guys' logic in a close ball game. You trust Russell Wilson a lot more than you trust Carson Wentz, but this ain't fantasy football. In order to be able to take advantage of the deficiency of the Eagles' defense, the back end, you got to be able to have time, and that offensive line for the Seahawks has got to be able to hold up in protection. I'll talk to you about the sack rate since Week 10 from that Seahawks offensive line. But if you look at Russell Wilson's passer rating since that point in the season, there's a reason why his production has fallen off since the first half of the year.
That's where his MVP.
Yes. Exactly. The first half of the year, in the first 9 games, he had a passer rating north of 100 in 8 of those ball games. But since then, he's only had a passer rating north of 100 in 1 of them.
Yep.
So Russell Wilson is not playing as good of a football as he was in the first half of the season, and I think there's a direct correlation to how the offensive line is playing and also losing those running backs and not have the balance of the production in the run game to lean on. So if that Seahawks offense becomes one-dimensional, yeah, I like Russell Wilson with the ball in his hands, but the Seahawks offense wasn't built to be a volume passing offense. So yeah, I'm concerned that the Philadelphia Eagles corners can't hold up in coverage. They're awful. I mean, they've allowed the 6th most yards to wide receivers and the 4th most touchdowns to opposing wide receivers on the season. But in order to take advantage of that deficit, you got to be able to have time. And I don't think that Philadelphia Eagles D-line is going to give Russell Wilson time.
First half of the year, Russell Wilson, 22 touchdowns, 1 pick. Second half of the year, 9 touchdowns, 4 picks when the protection started to break down. To the top story of the morning, that the Cowboys have reportedly moved on from Jason Garrett. There's obviously a ton of speculation about who could be the next head coach in Dallas. According to our guys at Fox Bet, Patriots offensive coordinator Josh McDaniels is the betting favorite to land the job. Brian Westbrook, I ask you, who should be the next head coach of the Dallas Cowboys?
Well, there's a couple characteristics that you need. First of all, you need to be able to develop quarterbacks because Dak went through a major change from last year to this year. He got better at reading defenses. He understood where the ball should go, and he was a more accurate quarterback throughout most of the season. So you have to continue that maturation for Dak. So you need to be able to develop a quarterback. Also, probably more important than what you do with Dak, you have to be able to push back on Jerry just a little bit and say, Jerry, I understand this is your team and you want to run things one way. However, allow me to be the head coach. Allow me to be the face of the franchise in a way so that after games, I'm speaking and I'm developing and delivering the message to the media so that there's never a situation that the players are saying, hey, well, we have a head coach, but I can just go to your owner and figure things out a different way. And that's going to be the biggest problem. And so when you look at all those things, it has to be someone that's been in the league for some time. This has some type of credibility. I think Josh McDaniels certainly could be a guy. I love Matt Rule, even though he hasn't been in the NFL for an extended period. But every place that he's gone, the guys have gotten better. He has taken a losing program in Temple, made them better. Same thing with Baylor, made them better. He's made the guys believe in him. So I can see them going a lot of different ways. But if that guy doesn't have the ability to develop quarterbacks and push back on Jerry, it's another fail as far as the head coach in Dallas.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You got to have a strong personality as your head coach. You have to have somebody that has the confidence and the conviction in what they're doing so they can push back against Jerry Jones when he brings up ideas that don't make sense in terms of doing what's in the best interest of the football team. Now, I don't want to knock Matt Rule or Lincoln Riley or any of these other prospective head coaching candidates from the college ranks, but where the Dallas Cowboys are at in terms of winning, they're in their window right now to compete for a championship. I don't think you have time to hire a head coach that doesn't understand what it takes from the head coaching role in the NFL in order to be able to win at the highest level. So that's why I would lean towards somebody like a Josh McDaniels. I mean, I know Mike McCarthy's not in consideration for the job, but somebody along those lines that's actually done it before, because that person has that working knowledge, that person understands what it means to be able to build the structure where you can have sustained success and put guys in position where they do what they do best and keep them out of positions where they get exposed with their deficiencies. So that's why I like the idea of Josh McDaniels coming back as a head coach. You know, in life, you learn more from your failures than you do from your successes. And so that 2-year stint that he had in Denver, I think him having the opportunity to go back to New England and be the offensive coordinator and try to figure out where he went wrong in his first time around as a head coach, it's probably going to do him some good in his next opportunity as a head coach. And I think that should be in Dallas this offseason.
I think Josh McDaniels will be a home run. I don't love how he left Indianapolis at the altar. I think it was unprofessional. I don't think that's how you do business. The whole league, though, seems to have gotten over it, so I should get over it as well. Everyone wants to interview him. Nobody seems to care about that. They assume his word will be better this time around than it was last time around. And while he failed in Denver, I actually don't really care about that. If we were ranking head coaches in the league, 3 of them were on their second job. Pete Carroll's on his second job. Bill Belichick's on his second job. Andy Reid's on his second job. Andy Reid's the only one who you would say didn't fail at his first stop. Andy Reid had just, after a decade plus in Philly, it was time to move on, but no one would say that was a fit. But Pete Carroll was not successful his time in New England. Went to college, learned from his mistakes, learned how more to be a head coach. Bill Belichick was not successful his first time in Cleveland. Now, Coach Mangini can tell us they were on the precipice, they were on the cusp, but that was not nobody looked at Belichick as that was a successful time as a head coach. He learned from it and now became the greatest head coach we've ever seen. The only person I would consider without head coaching experience in the NFL is Urban Meyer. And that's not because Urban's a friend of the show and Urban works with Fox. It's because Urban's track record of success is unimpeachable. He took Utah to a BCS bowl. He took Bowling Green to high level. Utah to a BCS bowl game. National championships, plural, at Florida. National championship at Ohio State. Undefeated 1 year at Ohio State when they weren't even eligible to go to the college football championship. So Urban, I think, has enough cachet that similar to Pete Carroll, by the way, when he walked into Seattle. Those USC teams teams were so successful and had so many pros. You had guys who were already pros who could ask teammates or friends across the league, what type of coach is this person?
Similar to what happened with Jimmy Johnson coming from the U to Dallas.
University of Miami, absolutely right. And that obviously was wildly successful for them there. The other element of this, and the reason why I wouldn't do the Matt Rule, Lincoln Riley thing with the Cowboys, but might do it for the Giants, might do it if Washington hadn't just hired Ron Rivera, for instance, or Carolina if they're interested. If you're rebuilding, I think having a young coach kind of learn on the job is okay. I think that the Giants, Carolina, they know we're not competing. No matter what Dave Gettleman tries to tell you, we're not competing for a championship this year. So if you have some moments where like, okay, I need to do that better, so be it. The Cowboys are in win now mode. I want to ask you this before we wrap up, Brian. If when you were playing, because you were on some damn good Eagles teams, you guys thought we had a Super Bowl opportunity, and all of a sudden you have a coach who you feel like is either in-game decision-making, doesn't quite know how to run a locker room. How do you think the veterans in the locker room respond to that if he's a young guy out of college who hasn't proven himself in the league?
Yeah, I think it would be a problem, especially if this is my last couple years of being able to win Super Bowls or win games in the NFL. There'll probably be an issue, but this is how you overcome that. If you're a young coach, if you're Matt Rule or even Lincoln Riley coming into a situation like the Cowboys, you go get some veteran coaches, guys that have been in the league before, to help you advise this football team. That gives you instant credibility with the guys on the team. You find some old coaches, the guys that have been coaches in the NFL already, put them on your staff. They're going to help lead you in that way. I kind of want to go back to Josh McDaniels because it's starting to make more sense to me. When you look at that New England offense, especially the last couple of years, they've been creative. They find different ways every single week to run the football. Next week, they're throwing the ball to the slot. The next week, they're throwing the ball outside into the tight ends. So they've been creative. That's something that the Dallas Cowboys need to do immediately. They've been multiple as well. They can do a lot of different formations, a lot of different sets, a lot of different personnels. Again, that's something that the Dallas Cowboys need to do as well. So when you think about all these things go into the thought process. All these things may have been discussed in those meetings with Jason Garrett as far as what the team needs to do next, the type of leader that you need. The Dallas Cowboys don't need the same type of leader as a team like the Cleveland Browns. They need a guy that does. We're not talking about discipline here. We're just talking about bringing the guys together in a better offense.
And if they are going to go first-time head coach, offensive mind from the pro ranks, Eric Bieniemy and Byron Leftwich. I don't know why Byron's name hasn't been mentioned. You can't blame the interceptions on from Jameis on Byron, but he threw for only 4 quarterbacks ever thrown for more yards than Jameis threw for this year. Those are 2 names I'd keep an eye on. Vikings and Saints face off on Fox at 11 a.m. And according to our friends at Fox Bet, New Orleans 7.5-point favorites. That's the largest spread of all the wild card games this weekend. But if you tease that down, you can get them just a bit. Canty, will the Saints dominate this game?
Yeah, I think the Saints will dominate this game. When you look at the matchup, you say the Saints have the edge in a couple of critical areas of this game. You start looking at the quarterback being protected. I think that the Saints have one of the best duos for the offensive tackles in the National Football League, and Ryan Ramczyk and Teron Armstead. Drew Brees is one of the best quarterbacks in getting the ball out of his hands. He's second quickest from snap to pass in terms of getting the ball out. And then that Vikings defense is 6th worst in terms of opposing QB completion percentage. And we know Drew Brees is one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the history of the NFL. So I just look at this from the standpoint of Drew Brees being able to get the ball out on time to his guys and let his playmakers do the heavy lifting. The Vikings haven't been great in terms of being able to hold up in pass coverage against opposing wide receivers. So that has to be an area of a little bit concern. And then if you flip it and look at the Saints defense going up against that Vikings offense, the Saints defense hasn't given up a 100-yard rusher all year. And Dalvin Cook hasn't averaged more than 4 yards a carry since week 8. So, I mean, we're talking about Dalvin Cook and his health and being able to add that dynamic guy in the backfield to take pressure off of Kirk Cousins. But Dalvin Cook of late hasn't been the guy that we saw in the first half of the season. So for all of those reasons, I have to lean heavily toward the New Orleans Saints.
When you look at the Vikings, the biggest question, just like you mentioned, is can they run the ball enough to dominate time of possession and take the pressure off of Kirk Cousins? Can they put their quarterback in the position where he doesn't have to go try to score 30 points by himself? He doesn't have to be the hero, because we've all seen Kirk Cousins in primetime games not have his best games of the season. But I also got to think about the talent that they have on the outside. Can Adam Thielen, can Stephon Diggs get involved in the game and say early and often? Can they do that? If they can do that, they have a chance of scoring points against the Saints. But when you look at the Saints, I mean, they're just they put up so many points. In 6 of their last 7 games, they put up over 30 points. In 6 of their last 7 games, Drew Brees has a passer rating of over 100. And so he's just been special with 22 touchdowns. And so when you're playing against the 8th worst pass defense to receivers in the league, the Minnesota Vikings, I think Drew Brees, Mike Thomas, Jared Cook has a big game. They get after it just a bit. I also think that Alvin Kamara has a great opportunity against this defense of out of the backfield catches in the screen game, as well as when he's displaced in the wide receiver position.
Yeah, this isn't the Vikings defense the last couple of years. 2017, Vikings #1 third down defense. 2018, Vikings #1 third down defense. This year, Vikings number 19 third down defense. It's been a huge liability for them compared to where they'd been in the past. Where they've been able to overcome it is Kirk Cousins was better, particularly after a tough first quarter of the season, those games 5 through 12. He was much better this year than last year, which helped propel them to the 10-5 start before they just didn't even care about their Week 17 matchup. The problem for them is they are playing a way overqualified 3 seed. The Saints, 13-3 most years get you a bye. The Saints this year are one George Kittle 4th down stop away against the Niners from being the 1 seed in that epic 48-46 game where if they get that stop or if that game just goes on another 2 minutes, they're 14-2, they're the 1 seed, and the Vikings are not having to go to the Superdome this week to face this team. Also, the other element for the Saints, I know we think about last year and what we say is, oh, they got screwed at the very end by the call against the Rams, and that's true. What's also true is Drew Brees was the MVP or co-MVP of the league along with Patrick Mahomes last season through the first 12 games. And then his production dropped mightily. I am not sure. One of you guys made this point a month ago, and I think it's prescient at this point. I wonder if those 5 games Drew Brees missed allowed his arm and shoulder to stay more live for late in the season at age 40. Because since Week 14, no quarterback, not Mahomes, not Lamar, not Russell, no quarterback's been better than Drew Brees since Week 14. First in the NFL in completion percentage, first in the NFL in touchdown interception ratio at 15-0, first in the NFL in passer rating at 137, first in the NFL as far as least number of times when he dropped backs he's been pressured. To your point, those tackles are holding up. So the Saints aren't a perfect team. Your Rankins and Davenport being done for the year, I think, could hurt them later in the postseason. But I would be shocked if they lose this game at home against the Vikings. And I just feel for the Vikings that this is the team they have to go up against. I do want to toss one thing at you because we've been, even when we all agree on something, it rarely happens, but occasionally we're all wrong. If the Vikings pull off what would be the biggest upset of the weekend, do you think there's any part of Drew Brees that looks at it and says, all right, so 3 years ago, the Minneapolis Miracle got us. Last year, awful officiating got us. This year, 13-3, and we lose a home playoff game. I've broken all of Peyton Manning's records. We're not going to have a better opportunity than we had this year, healthier on offense than we had this year. I'm about to be 41. If somehow the Saints lose, do you think it's in play Drew Brees says, I've done all I need to do in this league, and he walks away?
Well, I think you always have to consider it when you're talking about a player that's Drew Brees' age. But that being said, when you look at how good this Saints team is, I mean, these guys aren't going anywhere. This is a really good football team. You saw that the defense has made strides, and then they figured out a way to continue to put playmakers around Drew Brees, even in a salary cap era, because you lose Mark Ingram, but you got Jared Cook in the passing game. And he's been a great 1-2 punch with Michael Thomas. So I just like the fact that you have so much talent in every area of this football team. That will make it a tough situation to walk away from, just because you recognize that the Saints are going to be in this position under head coach Sean Payton in next year too. They'll be in play in terms of talking about the best teams in the NFC. That's something that's hard to walk away from.
Yeah, you know, when you're a competitor like Drew Brees, and that's what you've seen throughout these years, his years in the NFL, is that he's the ultimate competitor, chip on the shoulder from the time that he was in San Diego, smaller quarterback, but still getting it done. You don't walk away from the game after you lose in the playoffs, especially when you have all the talent on your football team, like you just mentioned. You just don't walk away from that. He comes back, he leads his team. I don't know that they lose anytime soon. We talking about the playoffs here this year, but I think Drew Brees, no matter what, he comes back unless they win the Super Bowl. If they win the Super Bowl, I think that changes the dynamic. You walk away and say, hey, hands up, I did it my way. I kind of did it on the way out, and I won the Super Bowl. Now I'm talked about in the elite of elite because I got all the rings. I have at least two, and then you have to have two to be in that greatest of great conversations at quarterback.
And speaking of rings, another reason Drew Brees not likely to walk away, win or lose, is those diamonds he likes so much don't pay for themselves.
That's right.
I'm just telling you, they don't. Those are expensive, man. Sometimes overpriced, I hear. Listen, man, read that line. Welcome back. First things first, and we're talking Tom Brady and the Patriots. They struggled down the stretch, losing 3 of their last 5 games. However, Tom Brady, of course, does, have 30 career playoff wins, and he's trying to get his 31st playoff victory on Saturday. Brian, what do the Patriots need specifically from Tom Brady in order to advance past the surprisingly dangerous Tennessee Titans?
There's 3 things that you need from Tom Brady. Number 1, no turnovers. We saw the pick 6 last week against the Dolphins. It ended up costing him the game in some way there. So he can't turn the ball over. And the errant throws, that's a big thing. The second thing we need from him, we got to find a way that the Patriots can find explosive plays in that offense. Can you get the ball downfield to Dorsett? Can you get the ball downfield to Harry at some point? Get a big chunk plays. They haven't been able to go little by little, play by play down the field. They need a special play, a chunk play, explosive play down the field. And last thing, they need to be able to hand the football off. In 4 of the last 5 games, they've averaged over 130 yards rushing. Make sure you get Sony Michel involved in the game plan. That means Tom Brady takes the ball out of his hands, hands the ball off to Sony Michel. Try to control the game that way.
I'm right there with you. I think Tom Brady's got to take care of the football. You can't afford any turnovers, especially with this Tennessee Titans defense, because they're top 10 in takeaways, and they've lived off of being able to play defense and steal possessions and keep the opposing offense off the field through that fashion. But I think another important thing for Tom Brady to do in this game is to make sure he finds a way to get his offense to score points early. This Tennessee Titans team wants to run the football. They're undefeated when Derrick Henry runs for over 100 yards. The way you can talk them out of running the football is get this team down early and force Ryan Tannehill to play from behind. Everybody talks about how great of a season Ryan Tannehill has had, number 1 passer rating in the NFL, and then number 1 in terms of yards per attempt. But a lot of those big plays in the passing game come from play action, having the opportunity to get opposing defenses to sell out against the run and then get favorable looks, favorable matchups. You don't get that if you're talking about the Titans being down double digits in that ball game. So I think dictating the complexion of the game is paramount for the Patriots to be able to come out of this weekend with a win. Tom Brady's got to find a way to be able to score points early, force this Titans team to play from behind.
The number 1 thing you guys said, and I will echo it, is play a clean game. And that is, even at age 42, that is something Tom Brady, over the breadth and width of the entire season, has done a good job in. But not shockingly, the 4 times the Patriots have lost, Tom Brady has done that. Now, not a pick 6 necessarily, but he's thrown a critical interception in a bad spot. And I do think it is a legitimate question to ask at this point. Who is, I was going to say in 2019, but in 2020 now, the real Tom Brady? We know who he is over the course of his career, but I'm talking about right here, right now. Is he the guy we saw the first half of the season that still looked like one of the 8 or 9 best quarterbacks in football? Or is he the guy we've seen the second half of the season, not 3 games, not 5 games, 8 games, where the team is 500, where they just lost to the worst defense in football, the Miami Dolphins, and where Tom Brady's numbers look like this? The second half of the season, he is dead last in the NFL in completion percentage, 30th in the NFL in yards per attempt, 27th in the NFL in passer rating. That's awful. And that is not a tiny sample size. It's a sample size of half the season. And that game against the Dolphins, while statistically it wasn't his worst game of the season, it might have been his worst game of the season because of who they were playing. The Dolphins, while Brian Flores deserves credit for that team not tanking and them getting to 5 wins, they finished the year as the worst defense in the league by far. The worst pass defense according to DVOA, the Football Outsiders folks, by far. And you couldn't take advantage of it. You went 16 of 29, 220 yards, 2 touchdowns, and the 1 interception that was the critical interception. We have lowered our standards so much for Brady that the game against the Bills, we say that was a great game. Mm-hmm. He threw for 270 yards and 1 touchdown. Now, he was efficient, completed like 74% of his passes. It was a good game by any standards. But not that long ago, just a season and a half ago, that would have been the expected performance from Tom Brady, even against a good defense. So I do wonder what Tom Brady we're going to see. I know this has to happen. The Titans have the 31st ranked red zone defense. The Patriots have struggled this year in turning 3 into 7. They're 26th red zone offense. When they get down there, because they don't get down there often. The defense scores, special team scores. The offense doesn't have those 8 plays, 65, 70, 75-yard drives. When they get down there, they have to turn those opportunities into 7 points. That's something they weren't able to do early in the game against Miami, and it cost them late in the game.
When the second half of the season, opposed to the first. Now, first half of the season, they played some bad football teams. The second half, they played KC, Baltimore, Houston, and the Bills, and they beat the Bills. But here's the thing. Tom Brady, when accurate, he can get things done. These last few games, really almost all season, he just hasn't been accurate, overthrowing guys too high, missing guys wide. And then there's other times, like I think the Eric Rowe interception, where he panicked a little bit, went to his first read, wasn't there, panicked and just tried to get the ball out of his hands. He's concerned about the contact that he's going to be getting. They have to be able to protect him, make sure that he has confidence in that pocket. That way, he can be accurate throwing the ball down the field. We are used to seeing an accurate Tom Brady. We haven't seen that guy most of the season.
Yeah, I don't want to give Tom Brady any passes for being inaccurate, but I do believe that some of the misses and some of the turnovers are as a result of not being able to trust those young wide receivers and those guys not being in the positions that he's expecting them to be in. So that's one of the things that you have to watch, especially early in this game. But, Nick, to your point about scoring when you have the opportunity in the red zone, they have to be able to take advantage of that because the Tennessee Titans are not good in that area. The Patriots haven't been good all year in that area either. But I think another critical area where the Patriots have to be good is sudden change. When that defense gets takeaway opportunities, that offense has to respond and be able to put points on the board. I think that's important in this matchup. That's something that we have to look at because that defense didn't play well in their regular season finale as well. I mean, you had a 4-point lead with 4 minutes to go against the Miami Dolphins, and you couldn't close it out. Stephon Gilmore was getting cooked by Devontae Parker. So that defense has to play much better than the last time we saw them on the field. I believe they will be up for the challenge against the Tennessee Titans, but it's also about being able to play complementary football, and that offense and that special teams have to come to the party as well.
Obviously, the 1 interception against the Dolphins came against former Patriot Eric Rowe, the best slot corner in football this year, the person who's going to be lined up on Julian Edelman, the only person Tom Brady really trusts in that offense, former Patriot Logan Ryan. That could be one of the key matchups of this game, how Logan Ryan does against Julian Edelman. Time to play Take Your Pick. Jason Garrett, reportedly out in Dallas. Didn't take the Browns nearly as long to fire Freddie Kitchens last Sunday. Both of these organizations have allegedly elite talent throughout the roster, but which is a better situation for a new head coach, Cleveland or Dallas? Brian Westbrook, take your pick.
I'm going with Dallas. I think that in Cleveland, you got to change the culture. You got to change the character. You still got to deal with Baker Mayfield. And I don't know that we're sure that he's going to be an elite level quarterback at this point. In Dallas, I think you have to change some things around. You got to get more production from the offense. But Jerry's willing to spend money. He's willing to invest in the team. Yeah, you're going to have to deal with Jerry. But I don't mind that if I'm the head coach. I'm just going in there and coaching some of the players. I'm going to Dallas Cowboys.
I'm going to go with Dallas, too, but I think it's a lot closer closer than you're letting on. I just look at the situation, the dynamic with Jerry Jones. He's not only the owner, but he's the general manager as well. He's the one responsible for buying the groceries that you got to cook the meal with if you're their head coach. In Cleveland, they've already let it be known that the next head coach is going to have input in terms of who the next general manager is. So I lean Dallas, but I think it's close.
I would love to go with Cleveland because Baker's still on his rookie deal. You're not going to have to pay him the way you're going to have to pay Dak. I think they actually have as much talent, the skill position, if not more than Dallas. Chubb, by the way, was better than Zeke this year and is cheaper. The reason I can't go Cleveland is this number right here, 25-8. This is Jimmy Haslam's 8th year as the owner of the Cleveland Browns. At the end of this offseason, he will be on his 25th different head coach, general manager, quarterback. 6 head coaches, 6 GMs, 13 starting quarterbacks in 8 years as an owner. Because of that, the total lack of stability. Meanwhile, Jerry Jones is nothing if not consistent. Jason Garrett, we're going to give you year after year, meeting after meeting. So if I'm a head coach, I'll take that stability over the mayhem of Cleveland. So I will say the Dallas Cowboys. Vikings Saints face off in a rematch of their epic playoff game from 2 seasons ago. Both of these squads have spectacular firepower, particularly on the outside. Cousins, Cook, Thielen, and Diggs on one side. Brees, Kamara, Thomas, and Cook on the other. So which team has the better offensive weapons? Brian, take your pick.
You know, when healthy, I'm taking Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs over the one receiver that the Saints have. Obviously, I think Jared Cook has probably better numbers than Kyle Rudolph, but Kyle Rudolph had 3-4 less receptions than Jared Cook, so it's a little bit closer. And I think Dalvin Cook as a running back is a little bit more, better fitted for running the football down the field. So for those reasons, I'm going the Vikings.
Well, here's the thing. I'm going to go with the Saints. Now, you look at the running back for the Vikings, Dalvin Cook is better than Alvin Kamara, but I think that's a smaller margin than when we look at the wide receiver position with Michael Thomas in comparison to Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs. And then their second best receiver for the Saints, Jared Cook, he's been balling 5 touchdowns in the last 4 games. I like what he's brought to that offense, so I would lean toward the New Orleans Saints.
If the way I read this question, we're removing the quarterback, and we're talking about the quarterback's weapons. In that situation, I will take the Vikings. Thielen and Diggs, I think, have an argument as the best duo of wide receivers in football. Dalvin Cook, when healthy throughout his career, has been an exceptional runner of the football. And Rudolph, while he might not have the numbers of Cook, man, you see the catches he can make, and you've always seen the talent with him. So I will take the Vikings by a small margin. Over the past month, Ryan Tannehill's thrown for more yards, more touchdowns, and posted a higher completion percentage than Tom Brady. But then again, so has almost everybody. However, we know playoff football is a different animal. Brady's 30 more playoff wins. It's 30-0. More than twice than the next active quarterback. Wait, no other active quarterback's got even 15? So who would you rather have Saturday? Ryan Tannehill or Tom Brady? Brian, take your pick.
You know, I've been preaching Tom Brady has been falling off all season long, but we're talking about the playoffs in Gillette. There's no one better to have on your side than number 12. I'll tell you that right now. Ryan Tannehill doesn't have the same type of experience. Neither does that football team. I'm going Josh McDaniels, Bill Belichick, Tom Brady, of course.
Yeah, I'm going with Tom Brady as well. You talk about Ryan Tannehill not having any experience in the postseason. He does have experience as a regular season quarterback in Foxborough, and guess what? He's over. So, I mean, listen, I get it was with the Miami Dolphins, but I don't trust Ryan Tannehill. Got to go with Tom Brady.
One of my best friends in the world, who's a big Patriots fan, his name's Kevin McCaskill. He runs a sports information service out of Massachusetts, Forest Park Sports. And when the Titans beat the Chiefs, he just kept texting me, touchdown Tannehill gotcha, touchdown Tannehill gotcha. Well, your New England Patriots about to have to deal with touchdown Tannehill this weekend. Tannehill's been better. Tannehill's been better, not just the last month. Tannehill, since they've taken over, #1 red zone offense in football, #1 passer rating, #1 yards per attempt. Brady, meanwhile, is in the bottom 5 in almost all passing categories over the last 2 months. I don't think the Titans win the game, but I do think, amazingly, they have the edge at quarterback this week, and I will go with Ryan Tannehill. On to Seahawks Eagles. Russell Wilson will be in Philly to face Carson Wentz. Russ looking for his 9th career playoff win, while Wentz will be making his first career playoff start. Brian, which quarterback needs to play better for their team to win this game?
really, when you look at both of these teams, both of them have been, are dealing with injuries throughout the entire season. And at this point, Carson Wentz, he has none of his starting receivers. His tight end has broken ribs and a lacerated kidney. His running backs have injuries with Miles Sanders. And so there's a lot of things going on. But Carson Wentz has been able to weather the storm and make his team play better. And so when I think about it, if their quarterback doesn't play well, I don't think the Philadelphia Eagles have a chance of winning this football game because Carson Wentz has been that force multiplier. He has been the guy that has taken his team on his back and on his shoulders these last 4 games of the season, and he's played well. I think Carson Wentz is a guy that has to have a good game in order for his team to win.
Yeah, I think Carson Wentz has to have a good game to put his team in position to win, but Carson Wentz's defense is significantly better than Russell Wilson's defense, so you have to look at the entire picture, and I think that I would probably lean towards Russell Wilson having to do more in order to give his team a viable path to victory. You look at the Seattle Seahawks, this is a run-first football team. Only problem with that is they've lost their top 3 rushers in the last 5 weeks of the regular season, so now they had to lean on bringing on Marshawn Lynch and then Travis Homer, guys like that. I don't necessarily feel good about the position that puts Russell Wilson in. And then you also factor in how that offensive line has played for the Seahawks in the second half of football since Week 10. They're the only team in the NFL allowing sacks on 10% of their dropbacks. That has to be a serious concern if the Seahawks aren't able to get the running game going. If they can't have balance on offense and they're forced to be a volume dropback passing team, that's going to put a lot of pressure on Russell Wilson. I do like the wide receiver matchups that the Seahawks have against the cornerbacks for the Philadelphia Eagles. The only problem with that is you have to have time in the pocket to be able to take advantage of the deficiency of that Eagles defense. I don't know if the Eagles defensive line is going to be able to afford Russell Wilson that time, especially going up against that offensive line.
No team that made the playoffs in the NFC had a worse defense than Seattle. By far. No team allowed more points. No team allowed more yards. No team was worse against the run. No team was worse against the pass. This is an offense-only team. Bill Barnwell compared them to the Colts team that won. He did, if the team wins the Super Bowl, what's the team it's going to remind you of? And he used the 06 Colts, which was an offense-only team that all of a sudden the playoffs, the defense flipped a bit of a switch. Bob Sanders, Quandre Diggs playing that role for Seattle. I think it's a great comp. Because Seattle, we think of Seattle and we say, oh, Pete Carroll, Legion of Boom, great defense. And for a lot of people who maybe don't do red zone or don't watch the whole league, they saw Seattle against San Francisco in that epic game the first time around, and you saw Jadeveon Clowney wreck shop throughout that football game. Problem is, since then, Clowney's been hurt. That game seemed to take a lot out of him. This team has a historically bad pass rush. 132 teams make the playoffs last 11 years. They're 129th in sack rate. Yet I'm still picking them. Why? Because of Russell Wilson. Because I believe in Russell Wilson's ability to make the special plays in the critical moments. And unlike last year, where they were a run-oriented team, they had all their running backs going into the playoff game last year against Dallas, so they thought we got to use them. Keep running Chris Carson in the line of scrimmage, even though that is not what is working. Run Rashad Penny. Run the ball 24 times for 73 yards, and with running backs 21 times for 60 yards. Just abysmal. I almost think, not for the totality of the playoff run, not if they play San Francisco again next week, which they probably would if they win, unless the Vikings upset the Saints. For this game, the running back injuries could help them. Because I think they will be forced into doing something they should have been doing the last few years, which is believe what your eyes are telling you. Russell Wilson's one of the 3 best players at his position in the entire NFL. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. You could argue he got snubbed for that NFL 100 list that just came out. He's that level of player. Rely on him to go to Philadelphia and beat this football team, a football team that one of the reasons they underachieved this year, Brian, was because of injuries. The other reason was a pass rush never fully materialized from Philly the way I thought it would. Fletcher Cox coming off the best season of his career, down to 3.5 sacks. I think Russell Wilson's going to have plenty of opportunities, and I think he is going to come through in those opportunities.
The Philadelphia Eagles have been beat down the field by receivers almost all season long, in part because of the pass rush has not been very good, and they've gotten inconsistent play from their cornerbacks in their secondary. Here's the thing, and you mentioned it, Nick. The Seattle defense hasn't been very good. It's probably one of the worst worst in the playoffs as we look at it. However, they're really good at taking the ball away. They're third in the league at takeaways.
Yep.
And the last time the Philadelphia Eagles played the Seahawks, Carson Wentz had 4 turnovers, 2 interceptions, and 2 fumbles. If Carson Wentz has that type of game, this is a runaway game for the Seattle Seahawks. He has to be able to protect the ball, especially in the pocket. That means 2 hands on the football and not making blind throws down the field. If he can do that, then the Philadelphia Eagles have just as good a chance of winning this football game with their cast of characters that nobody can actually name as the Seahawks do in this game in Philly.
Somehow I feel like this game's already been played. The Seahawks are down 5 with 3 minutes left, and Russell Wilson orchestrates a game-winning touchdown drive in a very close victory where you're like, Matt, were they the better team? I don't know, but they somehow found a way to win the game.
Thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Remember, leave us a review and tell us what you think. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and catch us on FS1 Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern.